Remember the obsession with drawing casual Disney princesses? That was so cringe. Okay, yes, I participated in that trend, not only as a child, but also an adult, because it's fun. Get over it. Jeez. But now it's Halloween. And how else can I fill my inner child's gaping hole but with drawing Disney princesses as monsters? I remember seeing like these evil versions of Disney princesses growing up, and I know you have too, where they're like zombies or like their creature friend is like a beast or a monster or something like that. So let me put an hour and a half aside to make a quick 3-character illustration. Speaking of designs, my students and I actually spend 10 weeks together doing this kind of character work. So the feedback tier of my mentorship is officially full, but there are still a few spots left in the spectator tier. My upcoming term runs from October 12th to December 14th, I think. So if you want to upgrade your character design portfolio alongside a group of other committed artists and students, then this is your chance. And if you're watching this a little bit later, I run 2 terms a year, so you could join my newsletter to see when my next one drops. Hope to see you in class. All right, back to princesses. Who to choose? Well, of course, I'm gonna go with my favorite girls, Rapunzel, Mulan, and Aurora. But then I started thinking, like, mermaid is such a good silhouette. It's so different from the rest of the characters. So, sorry, nap time is out and scary siren is in. But which princess would you turn into a monster? Drop them in the comments. I'll read them so then I can gather some ideas for next year. Thanks. So I put a little mood board together of what the characters could be like. For Rapunzel, yeah, she could just be like a zombie with long hair, right? But I could be a little bit more creative. I'm thinking she got like lost in the forest with nobody around. She started becoming one of the trees, right? Her hair becomes roots, and that's how she claims her prey. I love the idea that her hair just isn't long, but it's like alive, like they're creeping like roots, they're grabbing ankles. Maybe they're even like glowing in the forest. I don't know. It's creepy, but it's still kind of Rapunzel. For Ariel, okay, I know Evil Mermaid's a little bit basic, but you don't need to break what's perfect, right? I love a good Evil Mermaid. But maybe she like went power hungry with all of her treasures and trinkets, and she became like a siren in that way. She's like washed up ashore and she like crawls towards you and she drags you back into the water and steals your jewelry, right? That's kind of spooky. And for Mulan, I want her dragon to be involved. So I'm thinking like she's half dragon, half ghost woman, right? I'm terrified of the imagery of pale face, long black hair, so I think I can play with something there. So either she's part dragon, or maybe she's ghost and she summons her dragon. I don't know, we'll see. Let's see there. So I want 3 characters in this piece because that's what I did with my Casual Princess series, and I'm a woman of habit. My main focus in this sketch is the overall vibe and composition, so I'm very loose and rough, and just seeing where the silhouettes take me. I was very serious about finishing this in only an hour and a half because number 1, I'm a busy woman. I'm working full-time right now and I'm prepping for my mentorship. And 2, honestly, I can't focus on a task for longer than 30 minutes, and that's on brain rot. My attention span is fried. So I'm giving myself this time limit to move the project along. Time boxing is one of my favorite tricks when I don't want to get stuck like noodling on something. If you give yourself forever, you'll keep fixing these tiny details and you'll never finish the project. So I am forced to commit with only 90 minutes. So I start with lining Rapunzel because she's my favorite and I have a vision. for her. I don't usually line in this way with like every detail, but I'm trying to be efficient. My mantra is just make it exist and then you can make it good later. So I'm being very loose with the line application. I block in her colors, and this is where the tough part begins. What color should I choose? I don't want it to be bright or vibrant or it'll look childlike, but is creating dark and murky colors the only way to make something look adult, spooky, and creepy? Something I've been noticing a lot when I look at horror art is that spooky doesn't always mean dark. You can use bright colors too, like neons and acid greens and like disturbing off pinks, working more in unsettling combinations. So it's less about turning the saturation down and more about the emotion that the combo gives you. So that's something I'm trying to experiment a little bit in this piece. Okay, but quickly, I gotta tell you about today's sponsor. I use Squarespace for my portfolio and shop website. I've been using it for years and I've never been disappointed. It's so easy to customize with so many templates to choose from, and it always looks professional, and I don't have to know anything about tech or coding to make it work. I also host my shop here where I can manage everything from inventory to sales. It's super simple and my customers get to use any payment they want, like Klarna, Apple Pay, Afterpay, PayPal, etc., etc., etc. I'm a big fan of having a clear and simple website. So why not go ahead and make your own website with a free trial? And when you're ready, you can use my code JackieDrushko for 10% off your domain or website. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back to painting. All right, so I'm blocking out the colors in this scene. Maybe the background is just gray. Maybe it's like a forest at night and the moon is lighting the characters. I don't know, I think it's too complex and I want to simplify the concept. Maybe it's more abstract of a background with bolder colors like a red scene, but that's also too busy. I always underestimate how much the background changes the mood. Even a simple flat shape behind a character can shift the vibe completely. So the tricky part is making sure the background supports the design instead of distracting from it. And that's something I'm figuring out in this piece. So let's come back later once I start blocking in the rest of the characters. I start lining Ariel. I want to distort her face to make it look like the sea has changed her from a human more to like monster-like. I give her monster hands that are much bigger, and I give her all those tiny trinkets that she's stolen from her victims. And if you look closely, you could see her latest victim around her neck. Ooh, spooky. When I block in her colors, I realize that I don't think I want those murky colors. It's boring, it's cliche. How do you make something dark in theme and tone? But I've realized the more I try to force that dark palette, the less it feels like me. I like vibrancy, so I'd rather keep the color alive and let the design do the work. Creepy shapes, weird proportions, little story details, that communicates horror without having me to like drown everything in gray paint. Let's move on to Mulan. When you're stuck, move on, come back to it when your circumstances have changed. Like when I filled up most of the characters and I'm starting to block things in. I haven't been looking forward to Mulan because I haven't figured out her posing very well, and I'm just gonna try to wing it and hope it looks all right. I don't know if I've ever drawn a dragon, and I think it shows. I'm just gonna be even looser with my lines here and allow my brushes to create the smoke shape that I'm going for. Whenever I draw something that I've barely drawn before, like a dragon, I stop worrying about the details. It's more important to get the rhythm and the gesture down. If the smoke feels like it's moving or the dragon silhouette flows nicely, then people will buy it. And I could always fake the little stuff later. Like I said, it's better to make something exist now and then make it good later. And now that I've made everything exist, the answer is obvious. I'm gonna make the background a solid black. Duh, you know? Like sometimes the most obvious choice is the right one. A black background instantly solves like 3 of my problems. The characters read better, the mood got spookier, and I don't have to overthink any details. So I'm blocking in the Mulan colors now, and I'm sticking closely to her movie palette because I want to make it very clear who she is. So I'm using this bright blue overhead lighting to imply strong moonlight, and it also ties the characters together in the same environment. 1 hour in, I've already done 80% of the work. Once everything's blocked in, now all the hard thinking and the planning is over and the fun part begins. This is where everything starts really coming together and starting to look cohesive, and I start getting into detail. Detailing is where a lot of people get stuck because you think you need to polish everything evenly, but that's not the case. You only need high detail where you want people to look. So if the faces and the hands are clear, then the rest can stay pretty loose and the viewer's brain fills in the blanks. I always start with the character that I have the clearest vision for, and then the rest will follow suit. So I'm adding color in Rapunzel, adding textures and more root-like essences to her character. I'm keeping it loose by adding a layer on top of everything to add detail and clean things up. I do the same to Ariel, finding ways to add some fun flourishes of saturated color and bits and bobs because that's where I find joy. For Mulan, I add some textures, but also bring out some ribbon fabrics to fill up the composition more and to create some more fluidity in her character. Adding the mood to the background leads your eye to Mulan, and it creates like a bold silhouette. Little last minute tricks like this moon actually can really like save the composition. You don't always need to redraw everything. Sometimes it's about adding one shape or one light source that pulls your eye where you want it. At this point, it's really about adding those final details and the last touches that make the characters stand out a little bit more. These characters could have been designed a little bit stronger. I could have had bolder shapes and stronger concepts, but for an hour and a half, I think it's not bad. And I'm always flipping between grayscale, check my values to see how I can make the character's head separate a little bit better and create better value structure. In general, I think my darks are a little too intense and I don't have a great balance of midtones. But, you know, well, That's not my problem anymore. So tell me, which monster princess is your favorite? Which one would you rather encounter in the middle of a dark forest alone? Let me know in the comments. I think I'd rather encounter none. I think I'd shit my pants if I saw any of these creatures coming at me in the middle of the night. All right, thanks for indulging in my weird teenager obsessions. Remember, there are still a few spectator spots for my class that starts this Sunday. All right, I'll see you guys in class. Bye.